Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. The health of an organization depends in part on the health of its workforce, and that includes mental health well-being. Mental health is an important part of an individual's life, both outside of the workplace and in the workplace. In short, it affects every area of a person's life. And when we consider mental health well-being at the workplace, we could be talking about things such as productivity and efficiency, as well as general happiness at work. Considering that the organization is intertwined with the individuals within its workforce, it only makes sense that in order for the organization to be well, the workforce should be well as well. And while historically this has been seen in terms of physical health, recently we've come to recognize the importance of mental health at the workplace. It's important to remember that this is a kind of a two-way exchange, a cause and effect, a give and take. If the workforce of an organization is well, then the organization is likely to be well as well. However, if the organization in general as a whole is healthy, then it is much more likely that the individuals working within that organization will be well and healthy as well. This makes mental health well-being equally important to the organization as a whole and to the individuals within that organization. The first step to addressing mental health well-being, or anything else for that matter, is to recognize it and to recognize its importance. Even though this episode will speak mostly of the mental health well-being of individuals, it's important to point out that both individuals and organizations have an equal responsibility to address this issue. That's because both are equal contributors to this subject. Organizations have the responsibility of gauging the mental health well-being of their workforce and the responsibility of supporting mental health well-being. Individuals have the responsibility to check in and be aware of the general mental health well-being, both for themselves and for those around them. This includes things such as general affect and maybe productivity, levels of engagement, maybe things such as reactivity, and just general behavior. Basically, what we're looking for here is the ability to notice change. If you're aware of what's going on a regular basis, you are much more likely to successfully identify when things change. And change could be an indicator of something such as a mental health issue or a shift in mental health well-being. The next logical step is to understand what can be done to improve the mental health well-being, or if it's already at a desirable level, to keep it at that level. Since the responsibility falls on both the organization as a whole and the individuals both can contribute positively to mental health well-being at the workplace. Employers have the responsibility of understanding what is the general state of the well-being, that includes mental health well-being, of their employees. And from there, it's up to the employer to be supportive and to promote well-being, including mental health well-being, offering services or benefits that will help individuals to take care of themselves. Their well-being and their mental health well-being is another thing that employers can do. Individual employees must focus on self-care and seeking out professional services as needed. Individuals have the responsibility for taking care of themselves. You have to be your own advocate, and you have to engage in self-care. And when needed, it's up to you to seek professional help from a mental health care provider. And remember that when in doubt, err on the safe side. If you're not sure whether or not to seek help from a therapist or another mental health care provider, check in with someone on a professional level and go from there. When it comes to self-care and mental health well-being, work-life balance is a big deal. It's important that individuals invest the time and the energy to examine what their work-life balance is like and bring it to a level where they would like it to be. Make sure that you get enough rest and relaxation in your life, and that includes taking time off from work. Take care of yourself physically. That may include physical activities and exercise. Keeping your body moving and keeping yourself fit physically can be very helpful to your mental health well-being. Some people may find it helpful to engage in something like journaling. That may allow you to release some of the stress that you experience in your life and to help you take care of your mental health well-being that way. Make sure that you connect with others on a social level. We are social creatures by nature, so it's important that you connect with other people on a regular basis. Find something that you enjoy and do it whenever possible. Maybe a hobby. Engage in whatever brings you joy and happiness as part of self-care. Make sure you go outside on a regular basis. There's nothing like some fresh air to break up the monotony and the stress of being indoors and working all the time. Remember, this is all part of self-care, and self-care is an important part of mental health well-being. Whatever you choose to do for your own self-care, make sure that you try some variety and don't feel that you need to do the same thing all the time. But the bottom line is that you do something every single day to take care of yourself, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. After all, that's how you'll have the best chance to be well. And while employers can be supportive and provide resources, it's up to each individual to engage in proper self-care that will allow them to be healthy and well. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. The health of an organization is intertwined with the health and well-being of its employees. And while physical health and well-being have been a concern for both organizations and individuals for many years now, mental health has not gotten the kind of attention that it deserves until recently. The relationship between an organization and its workforce is a two-way street, so it makes sense that if the employees within an organization are well, the organization itself has a better chance of being healthy in general. And If the organization is a healthy one in general, its employees have a better chance of achieving and keeping a certain level of health and well-being. Given this two-way give and take interaction, it's in everybody's best interest to keep the employees healthy and well, both physically and mentally. Organizations and individuals can support mental health well-being in their own ways. Employers can be proactive and supportive of mental health well-being within its workforce, and it can offer benefits and resources that will allow individual employees to take care of themselves and their mental health. Individual employees must engage in self-care, which is a big part of being well. That includes mental health wellness. And while there are things that an individual can do and should do on a daily basis to take care of their mental health, there are also options to seek professional help when needed. If you're not sure whether or not you're at a point where you should seek a therapist's help, err on the safe side and talk to a professional. As the week unfolds, I invite you to take a look and assess the mental health well-being of yourself as an individual, and if you're a business owner or business leader, of the organization as a whole and the workforce as a whole. The two are so intertwined that it's in everybody's best interest to have healthy, well employees. That includes physical health as well as mental health. So, as you know from this episode, each have their own list of things that can be done in order to improve mental health well-being among employees. So this week, I encourage you to make an assessment of where things are. And if you're an employer, talk to your people. Find out how they're doing. This is how you will understand what's going on. And remember, being aware is part of this whole equation. If you're not aware of what's going on an everyday basis, it will not be easy for you to spot changes, to recognize changes when it happens or when they happen. So this is why we must all be aware, both as an organization and as individuals, whether we're looking at ourselves and our own behaviors of those around us, or at the organization as a whole. It's only by being cognizant of what's going on a regular basis that changes can be recognized. And sometimes changes are not necessarily for the better in terms of health and well-being. That's where action is so important. So make this week your focus for mental health awareness, whether that means in terms of the organization as a whole and the workforce as a whole, or as yourself, the individual. For those of you experiencing this podcast in an audio-only version, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel, which has the video version of this podcast. In addition to the podcast, my YouTube channel also includes videos that focus on stress management. The link for my YouTube channel can be found below in the description. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.